My son's wife handed me a paper plate at Thanksgiving dinner while everyone else ate off fine china. She smiled sweetly and said, "We're running low on the good plates, and I figured you wouldn't mind." I looked at that flimsy plate, then at the 12 empty chairs around the dining room table set with matching porcelain, crystal glasses, and silver flatware. That's when I knew they didn't see me as family anymore. They saw me as the burden they had to tolerate. What they didn't know was that the house they were sitting in, the business they were so proud of, and the comfortable life they were living all rested on something they'd completely forgotten about. Stay with me, because what happened next changed everything. My name is Gloria, and I'm 68 years old. 23 years ago, when my son Marcus was just starting out, he had a dream of opening his own construction company. He had the skills, he'd worked in the trades since he was 17, but he had no capital, no credit, and no investors willing to take a chance on a 28-year-old with big ideas and empty pockets. I was working as a school administrator at the time, pulling in a decent salary, and I'd been saving carefully for years. My late husband, Leonard, had left me a modest life insurance policy when he passed, and I'd invested it wisely. I had $180,000 in savings, money I'd planned to use for my retirement, maybe a small condo in Florida, some travel, peace and quiet in my later years. But when Marcus came to me, eyes bright with possibility, laying out his business plan on my kitchen table, I made a decision. I liquidated almost everything, $150,000, and became his silent partner. We drew up papers. It was official, legal, documented. I owned 40% of Carter and Sons Construction. Marcus owned 60%. The agreement was clear. I'd receive quarterly dividends, and I maintained decision-making authority on any major business moves. For the first 5 years, things were good. Marcus worked hard, the business grew, and I watched from the background, proud and supportive. He met Vanessa in year 3, a sharp, ambitious woman who worked in real estate development. They married quickly, and she immediately began positioning herself in the business. I didn't mind. She was smart, organized, and driven. She helped Marcus land bigger contracts, corporate clients, municipal projects. But slowly, something shifted. My quarterly checks started arriving late. Then they came with explanations. "Cash flow is tight this month, Mom. We had unexpected equipment costs. Don't worry, we'll make it up next quarter." Then Vanessa started CCing me on emails instead of calling. Then the emails stopped altogether. I was gradually being edged out of my own investment. It wasn't just the business, it was everything. Family dinners became less frequent. When they did happen, I noticed I was seated at the far end of the table, away from the important conversations. Vanessa would talk about the business openly, new projects, new hires, expansion plans, but if I asked a question, she'd smile tightly and say, "It's complicated, Gloria. We'll catch you up later." Later never came. Then there were the holidays. I used to host Thanksgiving and Christmas at my small but cozy home, but 3 years ago, Vanessa suggested they host instead. "Your place is so far, Gloria, and with your knees, we don't want you stressing over cooking." It sounded considerate, but what it really meant was that I was no longer the matriarch. I was a guest in my own family. The paper plate at Thanksgiving was just the final, visible symbol of something that had been happening quietly for years. I was being erased, marginalized, treated like the elderly relative you tolerate out of obligation, not respect. After dinner, I sat in their expansive living room, decorated with expensive furniture, art on the walls, a 65-inch flat screen, and I listened to Marcus and Vanessa talk about their upcoming vacation to Italy, business class flights, a villa in Tuscany, 2 weeks of luxury. "Must be nice," I said quietly. Vanessa glanced at me. "You could travel too, Gloria, if you budgeted better. Marcus always says you spend too much on your church donations." I smiled and said nothing, but inside, something cold and clear settled into place. The next Monday, I called my lawyer, Thomas Chen, a man I'd known for over 20 years. I explained the situation calmly, without emotion. Thomas listened, asked a few questions, and then said the words I needed to hear. Gloria, you still own 40% of that company. Let's review the books. We requested a formal audit, as was my legal right under our partnership agreement. Marcus was surprised. Vanessa was furious. "This is unnecessary," she said on the phone, her voice tight with barely concealed irritation. "We've been managing everything perfectly. You're going to waste money on an audit because of hurt feelings?" "I'm exercising my rights as a partner," I replied calmly. "If everything is as perfect as you say, the audit will confirm that." The auditor, a woman named Rachel Park, was thorough and discreet. It took 3 weeks, but when she finished, she handed me a report that made my blood run cold, and my resolve turned to steel. Carter and Sons Construction had grown significantly. The company was now valued at $4.2 million. My 40% stake was worth $1.68 million. But I hadn't received a dividend in over 2 years. According to the books, profits had been reclassified as operational reinvestment and executive compensation. Marcus's salary had tripled. Vanessa, who'd given herself the title of Chief Operating Officer, was pulling in $180,000 a year from a company she'd never invested a dime in. They'd purchased 2 company vehicles, a luxury SUV and a BMW sedan, both registered under business use but parked in their driveway every night. They'd even used company funds to renovate their home office, billing it as a corporate headquarters upgrade. In short, they'd been siphoning money that should have been distributed to shareholders, namely me. But the most shocking discovery was a document Rachel found buried in the files, a proposed buyout offer. They drafted paperwork to buy out my shares for $200,000, less than 12% of what they were actually worth. The document was dated 6 months ago, but had never been presented to me. They were planning to push me out and rob me in the process. I didn't call. I didn't text. I showed up at their house on a Saturday morning, Thomas by my side, carrying a leather folder full of documents. Vanessa answered the door in yoga pants and a designer sweatshirt, coffee mug in hand. Her smile faltered when she saw Thomas. "Gloria, what's going on?" "We need to talk," I said calmly. "All 3 of us." Marcus came down the stairs, confused. We sat in their living room, the one funded by my investment, and I laid it all out, calmly, precisely, with numbers, dates, and legal citations. "You've been mismanaging company funds and withholding my dividends for 2 years," I began. "You've paid yourselves excessive salaries, made personal purchases with company money, and drafted a fraudulent buyout offer." Vanessa's face flushed. "That's not... We were going to discuss..." "You were going to steal from me," I interrupted, my voice still calm. "You treated me like I was senile, irrelevant, a burden. You gave me a paper plate while you ate off china bought with my money." Marcus looked genuinely stricken. "Mom, I didn't." "You did," I said firmly. "Maybe Vanessa led the charge, but you stood by and let it happen." Thomas opened the folder. "Mrs. Carter has 3 options to present to you," he said. Option 1, dissolve the partnership, liquidate the company, and distribute assets according to ownership percentages. Option 2, Mrs. Carter sells her shares at fair market value, $1.68 million, payable in 90 days. Option 3, Mrs. Carter assumes majority control and removes both of you from executive positions. The room went silent. "You can't do this," Vanessa whispered. "I already have," I said, standing. "You have 72 hours to choose. After that, I'll choose for you." They chose option 2. They had no choice, really. Liquidation would have destroyed the business Marcus had built, and losing control entirely was unthinkable to Vanessa. They scrambled to secure a business loan to buy me out. It took them 60 days, not 90, and when the check cleared, $1,680,000, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Free. I didn't gloat, I didn't rub it in. I simply took my money, thanks Thomas, and moved forward. With that money, I bought a beautiful 2-bedroom condo in Clearwater, Florida, with an ocean view. I set up a trust fund for my 2 granddaughters' college education, something Marcus and Vanessa hadn't even started. I donated $100,000 to my church's community center. And I kept enough to live comfortably, travel when I want, and never depend on anyone again. Marcus called me a month later. His voice was strained. "Mom, I'm sorry. I should have stood up for you. I let things get out of hand." "Yes," I said simply. "You did." There was a long pause. "Can we fix this?" "Maybe," I said, "but not right now. Right now, you need to learn the same lesson I learned. Respect isn't given because of titles or blood. It's earned through actions, and you lost mine." I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is exhausting, and I'd wasted enough energy on people who didn't value me. Instead, I felt something better: clarity. They treated me like a burden until I showed them the bank statement. Now they know better, and I know my worth. My name is Gloria, and I don't need anyone's approval anymore.